You're right.
Yeah, talk to me, go on. Oh, it's gone all over me, Mac. Should have poured it.
Hello and welcome to Focus on 2021. I'm Gareth and this is Ellis. We're here to go through. You're right.
Yeah, talk to me, go on.
So we're going to go through. So we're going to have a look back, not over just films as themselves. We're talking about cinema, how the year's been, what we our favourite memories, and anything to do with film, but not necessarily just like a top five. This is just having a chat about how the year's been, has it gone how we expect it to, what we're excited about, and then maybe look ahead to next year in 2022 as well. Are you ready?
Absolutely. You always say about like decade-defining films, and like for example, in the tens, Into the Spider-Verse was a very decade-defining film. Um, in the 80s, something like Back to the Future was a very decade-defining film. It kind of sums up that decade. If there was a film from this year, just one film that was like the decade-defining film of the 20s, and we're in it, so I guess it's quite hard because it's something you have to reflect on. But what do you think that will be going forward?
The thing is, with things like James Bond, they're defining in themselves, aren't they? They sort of span the decades.
Yeah.
I don't think a Bond film will ever really define a decade. They just define Bond. Whereas I think Dune is probably decade defining, isn't it? Although it has elements of stuff we've seen before, because things like Star Wars was inspired by Dune. But yeah, that's going to be talked about, I think. I'll go with that. How about you? Do you have an alternative, or do you agree?
I think there's loads. I think it's really interesting to look at, like just the list of films that have come out and how different everything is. But for me, something that I think going forward will be reflected on as quite decade defining will be The Green Knight, because I just think like the visual aspect of that and how that film is made and how intelligent that film is expecting its audience to be. I think that says a lot about the generation of people that are getting into film now. And I think actually looking at film in 2021, a lot of it is very intellectual stuff. You know, you look at things like Judas and the Black Messiah, for example, Promising Young Woman, even something like West Side Story, and then to horrors like Candyman and Last Night in Soho. They're all doing things with the film medium to tell stories that I don't think any other medium can really do in the same way. You know, you can't absorb it in quite the same way as you can watching a film. But The Green Knight, for me, does something so brilliant. And I have faults with that film, and it's not my favourite film of the year. But it just, I think going forward, people will reflect on it like, wow, that really shifted the gears on what now film will become for the rest of the decade, for example.
Stop it there. I think we need to do a feature. Your
Oh, yeah?
2021 5-star films.
Mm.
So, Alice, what
Yes.
are your 5-star films for 2021?
So interestingly, I've got three that I watched on streamers, and those are The Mitchells versus the Machines,
Yeah.
The Harder They Fall, and Promising Young Woman. And then the other two that I watched in the cinema were Another Round and Dune. So those are my 5-star films of this year. What about you?
So Dune is 5-star. Another Round. Minari. Summer of Soul, which is on Disney Plus.
Uh-huh.
Mitchell's vs. the Machines is my last one. So there's 5 there that would give 5-star.
I was so close to giving Spider-Man No Way Home to be relevant and current at 5-star. But again, there are things that by the end didn't sit right with me. So
2 questions for you.
go on.
One is a positive question And I don't like to ask these, but one's a bit of a negative question.
Okay.
What is your biggest disappointment of the year?
Having a scroll down.
Have a scroll, mate.
For me, anything that was more of a disappointment, I gave a 3-star. It's that sort of mid-tier where I expected it to be top tier. One of those being Eternals. And I think, again, it might be an expectations thing for that I just fully expected that to be groundbreaking. And actually, I loved the grounded side of Eternals and the human side of Eternals, even though they're not human. I loved that side of things, just seeing their lives and how they're leading their lives, like Kumail Nanjiani's moments as Kingo in the Bollywood sections of this film, Brian Tyree Henry's character, Fastos, with his family, just trying to live as normal a life as possible after being an Eternal. And I just think those bits I cared for more. And for that reason, it didn't, when it got to the superhero big world-ending moments, I wasn't as keen. So I think actually Eternals is one of the things I've been more disappointed by.
I've got two. First one is Suicide Squad, because it was okay. The opening scene was pretty promising, but there's something about it maybe trying a bit too hard to be funny for me, that it made it not funny or not as entertaining as it could have been for me. And that's down in the 39th of my top list. The other one, I don't know if it's disappointing. The Power of the Dog.
Yeah.
Because I don't know where I'm at with it still. It's hitting a lot of top lists. Like The Guardian, I think, is number one. I can't remember who else.
Already on the awards radar as well. It
didn't really strike a chord with me in many ways, where I feel like seems to be, especially with critics, it's hitting the right notes, isn't it?
Yeah.
But for me, I was left a bit bored.
Because looking at ranking, like The Power of the Dog came in like just in my top 50 of the year. That's how sort of low down it is. Like, how many films have you watched this year?
I'm on 75, and this not quite finished the year, but I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I just wanted to put into perspective, like you saying, where you'd put the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, and then I've put Power of the Dog is at 30 something, 32nd. So my next question is your biggest surprises, your pleasant surprises, should I say? Things that you didn't think you were going to love as much as you did. Go.
Greenland. You see Gerard Butler and he's in a disaster film. I thought this is going to be very basic. We know what this is going to hit. It's going to finish with him punching a comet. But actually, it does none of that. And it was just great fun. And I watched it through my fingers and absolutely loved it. So Greenland was a massive surprise. And the other one, still like a 3-star film, but I just expected it to be dire. And it was really good fun. It was Flora and Ulysses. What about the flying squirrel? I
watched it on the back of you're like, I bloody love this, mate.
Yeah.
And I stuck it on, Flora and Ulysses, Disney Plus.
Yeah. It was just great fun. Like, there's so many gags that just happen in the background that work, and all the stars in it know what kind of film they're doing. They know they're in a film about a flying superhero squirrel, but they still hit serious, sad beats that work really well.
Those are two good picks.
What about you?
So my two are, I'll go with my first one, and it ties in with our first trip back to the cinema post-lockdown. Mortal Kombat.
Yes.
Oh, an absolute delight. Just laughed the whole way through.
Yeah.
It didn't take itself too seriously. I'll tell you one that I didn't like at the time, but it's grown on me since. So in that way, it's been a nice surprise. Is News of the World with Tom Hanks on Netflix. So when I first watched it, I gave it a 3, I think.
Yeah.
And we both talked about it in various times where it might have been, if I'd have watched it now, I probably would have put it down in 50th or something. And it was quite low down when I first watched it. And over the year, I've sort of kept bumping it on my list to the point where now it's on 26th out of 75. So it's pretty high. What questions you got for me, Ellis?
Well, I've got a few. Are there any like funny or dramatic or anything that's created a particular feeling of individual moments from films? So I'm not talking about the film, but I'm talking about like a moment in a film that's either made you laugh out loud and has stuck with you, or made you cry, or anything like that.
We've been to cinema together a lot, haven't we?
We have.
This year. And there's been moments, a couple of highlights. I didn't realise that some Odeon outlets have a reclining chair, and you didn't tell me to the last minute. And so in the pitch black, as the opening credits were going, all I could hear was a and your feet going up, looking at me like, I tend to laugh at things that I shouldn't be laughing at.
Mortal Kombat, we both laughed the whole way through that.
Yeah. Candyman was a great one to watch.
Really good.
Everyone was losing their minds. I think I lost my mind.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. The last duel sticks with me. I mean, we were laughing before the film had started just because we were at the adverts and whatnot. But it was when there's a moment in the film where there's in the climax film, there's a really gory moment, like really graphic moment. And I was there like what the hell? Like, this is disgusting, like, because it was so graphic.
It was pretty graphic, yeah.
And then I looked over at Gareth, whose shoulders are shrugging, and he's laughing away, and he's loving it. And
that's what I'm like with horror and any gore. Apparently, in Japan, it's quite like that. Because, Kill Bill, the really gory scene, is black and white here, but in Japan, it's in colour. Yeah. So they love it.
Yeah.
I find it hilarious, and I find it hilarious. Oh, I remember a good moment. This is the very start of Dune. Not even barely begun, and there was a sound. It went or something, and you were like, "Whoa."
It was just so huge. I think because we were in like the iSense screen. Oh my god!
Question for you.
Go on.
End of 2021. What shape do you think Marvel's in? Because obviously they've had quite a few films released this year. They've had a Disney Plus series, which have expanded and put Marvel into a new sphere.
Yeah.
What health status do you think Marvel is in at the end of 2021 compared to the start of 2021?
So at the start, I remember having conversations with you, and you were like, I don't think Marvel will ever top what they've done with sort of the end of the Infinity Saga, with Infinity War and Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that, because they were brilliant, and I can't imagine something coming out that does beat that. However, at the start of 2021, I was optimistic that these projects had a lot of potential. And by the end of 2021, looking back at everything, I enjoyed, for the most part, everything that's come out, and I'm still optimistic about what's still to come. So I've not dampened at all, and I'm in it and reflecting, like things like Shang-Chi. Everything really that Marvel has made fits in my opinion, to the MCU, and it works. I think there's one that are lesser, like Falcon and Winter Soldier, I didn't enjoy. WandaVision, I really, really did enjoy. So I think there's some that I prefer to others. I think they're in a good position, though, because they're not. I think Kevin Feige is doing a really good job at not just expanding his universe to make a bunch more money, and obviously he is making a bunch more money, but he's also like, with something like Shang-Chi and Eternals, he's telling really good stories about people as well as these superhero films. And I think he's using the platform that he has created. He's used the Infinity Saga to get to this point where he can. It's ridiculous that things like this are called risks, but that's how he said, that's how they've been viewed in the past. Something like Shang-Chi would have been viewed as a risk, and now it's not. Now it's something they can do. They can have a fully Asian.
They've got the trust there, haven't they?
Yeah, so they know they can. I mean, looking forward to next year, it's a lot more familiar with what they're bringing out, especially film-wise. So they've got Thor, Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. So all worlds that people are familiar with. You know, Shang-Chi and Eternals were two worlds in two of the big films of the year that we weren't familiar with. And even Black Widow, it was only Natasha that we were familiar with in that film. Everything else was new. So I think it's interesting now looking to the films that now there's going to be this familiarity. And there's obviously been that in Spider-Man No Way Home. And the TV that's coming out is all new. So whereas TV this year with WandaVision, Falcon Winter Soldier, Loki and Hawkeye are all characters we know. Fair enough, we now know them more than we did before, but they were all characters that have been in the MCU. Next year, the TV that's coming out, you have Miss Marvel, Moon Knight and She-Hulk. 3 characters that we don't know in the MCU. So it's interesting that it's flipped the film and TV around to suit new audiences, I guess.
Top 3 Marvel from 2021?
As in projects or film?
Anything.
So I think WandaVision still is my top spot.
Interesting.
I really enjoyed that. I loved unpacking that. That was something I like to speculate because you had no idea what was going to go on in that film. So you
check out the podcast, by the way.
So yeah, WandaVision top, then Spider-Man, and then Shang-Chi. I think they're my top 3.
I haven't seen Spider-Man yet.
You haven't.
But what
are your top 3 other than that?
I'm going to say Shang-Chi 3. I haven't seen, there's a few I haven't seen, to be honest. Shang-Chi, Eternals, WandaVision. I really enjoyed Eternals. But I think I'd watched it after all the hype had died down. So yeah. I sensed that it was a bit mixed review. And if you look at the reviews, they are genuinely really mixed. They're between like a 3 and 4 star. I went with 4 star, FYI.
I was looking at who's had the sort of good years as the last thing to talk about. So people, individuals or studios or anything that have had a good year. And obviously Disney always seems to have a good bloody year. But just looking to see if there's any actors or anything that have been in a lot.
I've got one already off the top of my head.
Go on.
Zendaya.
Oh, yes.
She's amazing, isn't she? Just so really good.
Really.
Malcolm and Marie obviously started the year with that. Obviously finished. Yeah, she bookended the year. Dune. She didn't play a huge part in Dune, but her presence was definitely felt, I think.
Yeah.
Why
she was in that Euphoria as well.
Yeah.
She's been around for a while.
This says she's in Space Jam. She?
Yeah, she's Lola Bunny, I think, in Space Jam.
But even those 3, Malcolm and Marie, which I think she's fantastic in, even if you don't like the film.
Yeah, she is.
Dune and Spider-Man. How is she in Spider-Man?
She's brilliant, especially now that Zendaya is such a well-known person, like character as herself. Yeah. It's like as an individual, you know who she is. You know she's still MJ. She's still completely different, and yeah. Someone I'd noticed had cropped up quite a lot was Lil Rel Howery.
Yeah,
who's the guy's mate in Ryan Reynolds' mate in Free Guy. Have you seen Free Guy?
Oh yeah, I've seen Free Guy. Yeah,
his mate. He was also in Judas and the Black
Messiah. Oh yeah.
He was in Vacation Friends.
Lil Rel Howery. Yeah.
Space Jam. Fatherhood.
Judas and the Black Messiah.
Yeah.
Space Jam. Everyone's in Space Jam. What's going on?
I find him really irritating. So I think it's interesting that he's in so much, but he was someone that I mean, Lin-Manuel Miranda's had a brilliant.
He loves it.
Tick Tick Boom, he directed. In the Heights was his musical. Vivo did a lot of the stuff for that, and Encanto.
Have you seen Vivo?
I haven't. No.
It's basically it's all based around this one single that they've got. I feel like with I've not seen Encanto, to be fair, but is there a question for you? Is there one tune in Encanto that you feel like they're going to try and palm this off as a single?
No, and that was part of Encanto's problem, actually, that it wasn't like usually with like Frozen, Let It Go was the one they were like selling. Frozen 2, it was Into the Unknown. There's usually one. Moana, it was You're Welcome. There wasn't really one for Encanto.
There's definitely one in Vivo. It's called, I think it's Sound of Your Own Drum.
Right.
And they milk it to high heaven. It goes on for about 20 minutes.
John Cena. John Cena's had a great year.
Is he? What's he doing then?
He was the best part of Vacation Friends.
Yeah.
He was, in my opinion, the best part of, or one of the best parts of the Suicide Squad. And I've not seen it, but apparently he was the best part of Fast and Furious 9. I've got one more. The Rock, Jungle Cruise, Fast
You
Furious
never
9.
forget about The Rock.
Was he in Fast Furious 9?
Yeah, Dwayne Johnson, Jungle Cruise, Free. What was the question? Was he in what?
Fast Furious 9.
No, doesn't look like, He was in Hobbs and
Oh,
Shaw.
no, there was a whole thing of Vin Diesel asking him to come back for the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jungle Cruise, Free Guy, apparently he's in. Is he? Yeah.
Yeah, he's a cameo.
Red Notice, and then coming up next year, The League of Super Pets, and of course, Black Adam. We're nearly at the end. I know we've been speaking for a while, but we're nearly at the end of my questions. How has 2021 compared to your expectations? So similar to the Marvel question, but in general, how has this year compared to what you were hoping?
I think if I'd have looked at the start of the year, I think looking back to January, like what was I most looking forward to? It was Bond. It was Dune. It was Spider-Man, Last Night in Soho, and Shang-Chi. And that's like, what, 5 did I just list of my top 20? So the fact that the other 15 in my top 20 films of the year I wasn't thinking about beforehand is quite a big deal, I think. So looking back, I've just been amazed at the amount of things I've watched that I've instantly loved and the amount of 5-star films I've had, because last year there was only, I think, one, and it was Mangrove. I think as a whole, it's been a really bright and colourful and vibrant year for film. Even in darker films like Promising Young Woman, all the costumes and cinematography of Promising Young Woman is very bright and loud and amazing. So I think it's been a really colourful year for film. And it has delivered some career best performances, for people like Daniel Kaluuya, for Nicolas Cage, arguably, like I've been saying, maybe for Riz Ahmed.
Yeah.
So Carey Mulligan, even Mads Mikkelsen. So Tom Holland. So I think yeah, it's been a really, really good year for film. I've loved it, and I can't see 2022 living up to it, to be honest.
My expectation, or what I wanted to happen in 2021, was that I wanted to go to cinema. At the start of this year, we were in lockdown. Vaccines had just started being rolled out, and there was a bit more hope. And then when did we go to watch Mortal Kombat? What was that, March? April?
I was going to say May, but
could have well have been May. So start of the year, not really knowing what was going to be released. I was just hoping that you'd be able to see some things. And I've never been to the cinema so much, I don't think, in a year.
No, I haven't.
Really great experiences, not just the films themselves, but really appreciating the experience of being in cinema. One of the highlights was Scott Pilgrim when they did the Dolby re-release. So good. But throughout this conversation, we've talked more about the fun we've had going to the cinema.
Yeah.
But we're ending this year in a similar uncertainty. I'm ending this year thinking I want to support my local cinema, which I've got one here, because they're in a precarious position. Cinemas is still in a precarious position, because I think even us going to cinema, we've noticed it get busier and busier.
Yeah.
When we went to watch Mortal Kombat, there was hardly anyone there. And I'm sure, I guess it was full when you went to see Spider-Man, was it?
Absolutely, yeah, and I both times.
It's 2021 has far exceeded my expectations, because I didn't have that many. All the big movies that have been pushed back, I loved. Like the hype was, it didn't spoil it in any way. But yeah, it's one of the best years if you're a movie lover to go to the cinema, because you appreciated it a bit more.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so thanks, Ellis, for joining me today.
Yeah,
It's been a glorious conversation.
it has.
I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed talking about 2021.
I've needed it. I've needed to just
I'll get it off your
talk
chest.
about talk about film because there's so much that's gone on.
I didn't realize I had this much to talk about.
Check out. I mean, it might not quite be out parallel with the video, but around the same time, we're bringing out our top 20 films of the year, made by sort of all of us at Focus Film, putting one big list together, and we'd recommend all 20 of those films. If you haven't seen them, go and give them a watch. Plus, at the start of January, the Talk About Awards will be happening. Our podcast Talk About Awards, so you can go vote for them as well. Go vote on Instagram and Twitter. You'll find the polls on there. Nice.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Stay safe. Peace and love and understanding. See you, Alice. Nice chatting to you, mate.
Yeah, nice seeing you. And it's been a pleasure.